Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Brandon. I am a freelance photographer based out of New York City. And today I'll be walking you through how I prepare photos to post to Instagram. So I'll be walking you through a little bit of the shoot. We'll also be sitting down here to go through the selects and choosing the exact photo out of the thousands that will go up to my Instagram. We'll also be editing the photo together, choosing a caption, and then making it live to my feed. This shoot was with my friend Madeline, who also happens to be one of my favorite models to work with. We first shot, I think, like 4 or 5 years ago, so it was really cool to come together again. But we shot this for Adorama's new series called The Masters here on YouTube. They're following around a bunch of different photographers and their different styles. So they came over here to my apartment and followed me around on a shoot just to see how I direct and how the process goes from start to finish. So if you're interested in checking out all of that behind the scenes, I'll be leaving a link in the description of my video. And then once you're over there, be sure to leave a comment that I sent you, and I hope you enjoy it. But now it's time to sit down and go through the selects from that shoot. A question I get a lot on my Instagram and through my photography is, do you only edit that one singular photo that you're posting to Instagram from a whole shoot? And the answer is no. I usually edit a ton more. I'm taking thousands of photos usually on these shoots, so I definitely don't just edit one. Sometimes it's tempting because there's just that one photo that just outdoes the rest, but usually I'm able to select a ton of usable images that I can use later down the line. And for making those selections, I use Adobe Bridge. And this is actually a free application. You don't need a subscription to Creative Cloud to use it, which is really cool. And it's just a way to better manage and organize all these photos that I'm taking. Once again, I'm usually taking like thousands of photos on these shoots, and I need a way to just oversee everything. So they have a really cool collection of different panels and review modes that I can choose and select and go through and make sure that I'm comparing photos correctly, and I'm always walking away choosing the best shot. You can also see every image's metadata, so things like what camera it was shot with, the exposure, the ISO, everything. So I really like this program, and let's open it up so we can start going over which image we actually want to post. Okay, so I just opened up all the photos from the shoot, and as you can see, they're kind of like in this carousel mode. And from here, we can easily just press the down key to get rid of a photo. Or if we want to keep it, we could just simply go to the next one. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I'm shooting, some of the images in the beginning definitely aren't my favorite. It usually takes me a minute to kind of get into the groove of a shoot. So I'm just kind of quickly going through and passing on a lot of these ones because I know that a lot of the ones later on are definitely better. We also switched up the lighting and the location here, so I know that a lot of these aren't really usable. So as you can see, these ones are definitely more my speed. We changed the projector to kind of emit this more pink hue to kind of match with her sweater. And the background is just overall kind of less distracting and a little bit more simple. And this shoot was literally just done in my bedroom. So it's really cool to kind of be able to create a really cool moment out of something just so accessible to me. And when you're making your selects, you just want to be mindful of things like focus and blinking. So this shot is cool, but the model's blinking, so we'll definitely pass on this one and try for another. It's really nice to compare and contrast the two and just be sure we're making selects on the best possible photos and passing on anything that, we don't want to spend and waste our time editing. With this shoot, it's looking around kind of 15 to 20 end result photos that we want to select, and then from there, I might edit like 5 to 10. All right, so I stepped away, did some more comparison, and I've settled on these 6 images. Not exactly sure if I'm gonna post all 6 to Instagram. I usually opt for maybe like 1 to 3, but I really like these and it could be a possibility, but let's open up our first photo and get started. If you've seen any of my editing tutorials before, you know that I shoot in RAW, so all we're gonna do is just double tap that and open up our file in Adobe Camera Raw. Just playing around with auto settings and all of these different basic adjustments like exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows. I do the same thing for each photo when starting out, playing around with the temperature and the tint and just making sure everything is how I imagine it. I really love how this kind of glow turned out from the projector. If anyone's curious, I used a lens filter for that, and it was one of my first shoots done with this specific filter that takes really bright direct light like a projector or a sun and really emphasizes the glow. And so I just want to emphasize that even further within Camera Raw right now. So just playing around with different hues and contrasts and highlights. I always know that we can kind of go in and make additional changes, so I don't want to get too stuck in there. So we're going to open up our photo now, unlock and duplicate our layer. The first thing I always like to do is get rid of anything that's super distracting using either the clone stamp tool or the patch tool. And in this case, there's a few things. There's like a light switch and a thermostat. There's a part of the door that's just drawing my eye to it when I don't want it to be drawn there. I want it to be drawn to, you know, the model and the lighting, and little distracting things like that are annoying to get rid of, but in this case, I'm totally down to spend the time to do it. And using tools like Content Aware Fill have become super helpful and are really powerful and kind of take away from the time that you have to spend editing all these things out yourself. So I'll definitely be making use of that as well within this edit. And now I'm just going in and emphasizing the light itself and the light on her face as well using the dodge tool. And then one of my favorite adjustment layers to use, of course, is selective color. So just going in there and playing with the colors that show up the most. So different magentas and yellows, just skipping around and going back to kind of highlighting her hair. And so whenever I shoot with some of these different like glows and lights that are off to the side of a model, I think it's really cool to add some different like particle effects. It's funny because once you input the overlay, it looks really intense. But the key to this is just keeping it subtle and making it look like it was naturally there. For me, I just have a folder of a ton of these and they really come in handy. From here, I'm just combining all of the layers into one so we can play around with different presets. And from there, I always overlay it and bring the opacity down. Including a levels adjustment helps with contrast and making sure that the shadows and the midtones and highlights are within range. And once again, just combining these layers and playing more with different presets. This helps change up the entirety and look of the photo, and presets are always fun to play with, even if I don't always, you know, set them at a high opacity, because they always give me a look that I kind of normally wouldn't go for. Each photo tends to have its own preset that it looks good with, and you never know which one that will be. Bringing in another overlay here, this one represents a sort of film burn, but when we use it on a blending mode like lighten and then kind of play around with levels and opacity, it actually creates this really cool subtle like tone to the image. It adds a lot of cool like grain as well, so this is something I've liked to do recently within my images, just playing around with curves and trying to be as intentional I can with the colors that appear here. And then we're just gonna simply export this photo, and another thing I like to do is send it on over to my phone and play with even more presets and adjustments over there. So we'll get to that in just a second, but something that's really cool about all of these photos that were shot within the same kind of setting here is that when I'm on my shoots, I'm pretty mindful of the lighting and the settings of the photo that I'm shooting, because I know that once we edit one of these images, we can actually apply a lot of these same filters and adjustments to another photo from that same setting. So all of these photos that we have selected to edit will go way quicker because we're able to apply the previous settings. Obviously, each photo comes with its own, you know, unique colors and flares that won't relate back to the previous one we just edited, but it's more likely than not that we can just make simple tweaks off of that kind of base adjustment. So what we can do here is just open up another selection from the ones we've chosen, head on over here to apply previous setting, and it is fairly spot on to what we were just working with. I'm just gonna play around a little bit more with the temperature, but as for the exposure and the contrast and the highlights, that's normally how I would do it. So we just saved ourselves a lot of time, and that's exactly what we want within our own process. So I'm just gonna do the same exact thing to all of the other photos, kind of go through and edit out different distracting elements, and then add different presets and adjustment layers like we just did. So we're gonna select all of our edits here, head on over to share and then airdrop, and my phone should be there. There it is. Sometimes it doesn't show up and I'm like, come on. And like I said, I do like to make adjustments on my phone. Not everyone likes to do that, but I'm staring at a fairly larger screen when I'm editing these photos, and then normally people are viewing it on a tiny screen like this. So I just want to make sure everything feels good. I'm pretty picky with how colors look, and even a small transfer from a computer to a phone bugs me. So I really like to change it up. And what we could do here is just go into our actual camera roll and go to edit the photo. Here is where I also like to play with the crop of a photo. I don't necessarily always like to kind of crop the photo in Photoshop because sometimes we can't go back. Not doing anything too crazy because I feel like that was done within Photoshop. So just playing with the temperature and the tint. Two apps that I really like to use on my phone are VSCO or VSCO, and then Prequel is a really good one for different filters and effects as well. Sometimes I'll open up the photos on those two apps. On VSCO specifically, I have a few favorites. So within that, I have a lot of the C's favorited, I have a lot of the A's favorited, as well as the E's too. And what's cool about VSCO too is you can copy and paste and edit. So once you've edited one photo, you can kind of did what we did here within Photoshop Camera Raw and just copy and paste that same filter. I also get a lot of questions about the borders that I add to my photos. And yes, I'm still using borders in 2022. I started literally in 2013 or something, and I can't go back now. It actually hasn't inhibited me too much, and honestly the feed is looking good, so I'm not that mad. But for the borders, I use an app called Afterlight, and I actually don't think it's even on the App Store right now. I think they discontinued it. Let me check. Okay, it's still on there, but I have an older version. But there are a ton of different apps that you can use for borders, and you can even add your own borders to your photos using Photoshop as well. It's really easy. You just create a new layer and fill that layer with white. And then from there, the last thing I do is choose a caption. In this case, because I'm working with Adorama on this photo set, I'm gonna mention them within the caption, but I always like to find some sort of quote or lyric to relate back to. And for that, I actually just use Pinterest. And for this, I usually aim for some sort of lyric or quote. Pinterest is cool because once you kind of click on a photo that is the vibe you're looking for, it'll give you hundreds of similar posts. Another thing I do is whenever I'm listening to a song and I hear a lyric that I think could make a really cool photo, I'll also write that down in my notes app. You definitely don't have to even do a caption, but I think it helps kind of draw back to the narrative of a photo. I think this one will work. So all we're gonna do is type that out. Be sure to tag Adorama and Madeline here, and then make it live. So now that you're seeing this, the post has gone live. So if you wanna head on over there to my Instagram, we can chat in the comments. My username is @BrandonWoelfel, and you can find me all over the internet on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, all the things. But yeah, it was really fun taking you guys along on this process, and maybe your Instagram posting process looks a little bit different, but maybe you learned a thing or two. But yeah, with all of that, I will see you guys soon. Bye.